we've been talking about the culture of innovation, the ecosystem, you're going to talk about AI and so many other things. This session is going to dwell upon diversity in thought and its vital linkage, diversity and inclusion rather, and its vital linkage to innovation. How many times do we give a thought to that? But all of you coming from diverse organizations, I have a very interesting panel, not diverse in gender. Till last evening we were, and then there was a change. So we are all women on the panel, but very, very diverse from the space that we are all coming from. Because I have Anandi coming from HUL, that's FMCG. I have Priyanka coming in from Accenture Consulting, Neha coming in from Amaha, that's health and wellness, and then I have Aishwarya coming in from Decathlon. And myself, I am from the oil and gas sector, from public sector. So it's a diverse panel in that sense. So we all come from different organizations. And it's been established now that corporate diversity is a game changer. And no doubt it's a force multiplier. I think we all agree with that. All the men in this room will also agree with that. Diverse thoughts, perspectives do add value. And in fact, this has been proven through a number of surveys that have been done where the ROI of the company, the performance of the company has changed. There is a paradigm shift, no doubt. Focus has changed of managements. Today they're setting targets on seeing how they can have diverse teams. Because managements have realized that where there is diversity of thought, where there is diversity of perspective, there is a lot of impact on attitude, on approach, and actions. And of course then, on the performance of the company. It has made a lot of difference. And I myself experienced it when I was on the board of EIL. It was a diverse board in the sense that I was the woman on the board. So from gender diversity point of view, we came from different backgrounds. I came from ONGC, my chairman came from Gas Authority of India, my director of finance came from BPCL, and the rest of the directors were all from grown inside from EIL. And I experienced the kind of things we could achieve because of the diverse thoughts and backgrounds that we came in. Coming in from PSU, we are groomed in a diverse environment, regional diversity, all kinds of diversity. And we've experienced it. But now linking it to innovation. When we talk about innovation, it's no longer a buzzword today. It's again a competitive edge. Like diversity is no longer a compliance, it's a competitive edge. Innovation also is a competitive edge today. And managements are focusing on it. The previous panel which was there explained how their companies are going out of their way to set up hackathons and different departments and academies and so on and so forth. But it is also correct when we say that it's no level which can bring in innovative thoughts, no particular gender. An idea can be seeded in at any level and it can become an innovation. So then, through this session, let's hear some interesting stories from my panelists on what is the vital linkage between innovation and diversity and inclusion. So as I told you, they're coming from different backgrounds, all of them. So starting with Anandi, tell us some episodes from your company and your opening thoughts.
Sure.
So each one of you, I'll request you all to stick to your time about 5 to 6 minutes so that we can have a better discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Veena ji, and a very good afternoon to everybody, and I'm really looking forward to learning as well as sharing on this panel. I work at Hindustan Unilever Limited, and it's a really large FMCG. And I think the one thing we realize is that innovation doesn't have to be big, bold, in your face. Innovation can be small changes that make a difference to consumers. whether you put lavender in Lux, or whether you put Tulsi in Red Label, these are small innovations as well. And sometimes a culture of these small innovations is as important as having one large innovation in a year. So let me tell you a story, especially after lunch. Many of the faces around look like we need a cup of tea. So let me tell you a story about a simple cup of tea, Red Label. Yeah? And I'm sure all of you all have heard of Red Label. Red Label is our largest tea brand, and 5 out of 10 households in India consume Red Label tea. If you go back over the last 10 years, you'll see that Red Label has changed. Yeah? Red Label is no longer just a cup of tea that you have, and it doesn't talk about what are the benefits of chai. Red Label has changed to say, can I become something that represents a slice of India? If HUL says that it's a diverse and inclusive organization, one of the most powerful tools I have are my brands like Red Label. And so can we make a very audacious claim saying that our brands will also stand for diversity and inclusion? Over the last 10 years, Red Label has started communicating and doing advertisement about innovations which are on inclusion. Do many of you all remember 12 years ago, an ad that came out on Hindus and Muslims with Red Label, where a Hindu couple comes back home and the Muslim lady is making tea, and the wife says, "Inki ghar ki chai ki smell bahut achhi hai." And I apologize for people who are not Hindi speaking, but it says that the tea from their house smells very good. And after a lot of trepidation, they go in to share a cup of tea on Swad Apne Pan Ka. And that's where Red Label said, can we talk about inclusion of the country? Can we be a voice of advocacy for inclusion in the country? A few years later, we followed that up with another Red Label ad, which was again about inclusion. This was about transgender, where someone is stuck in Bombay rains in a taxi, and a transgender or a hijra, but I would prefer to use the word third gender, transgender, knocks on the cab, and she says, no, I'm not giving you money. And that person says that I would like to give you a cup of tea in this rain. I'm not asking you for money, I'm asking for your blessings. And again, it's about celebrating differences by coming together and sharing a bond which is Swad Apne Pan Ka. And over the last decade, Red Label has stood for inclusion. Now, why is it, and when I look back as an HR professional, I think why is it that one brand can stand so deeply and talk about inclusion? And what is it that happened differently within HUL with this brand? The first thing is that this team that works on tea is actually very different. Not just in terms of men and women, it is a diverse team, but also it has equal representation of people who have grown within HUL and people who have come from outside. People who've joined us from agencies, people who've joined us from digital, someone who's had work experience outside. And so the first thing is that this very different team was safe enough to speak out about a trend that could be completely different. It is very easy for tea to be a cup of tea, but it is very difficult for tea to say, I want to stand for something on Hindu-Muslim, or I want to stand for something about LGBTQ. Yeah? And therefore, it took one person in this different team to have a very diverse idea. The second thought, that in this very different team, people listened to one another. An idea was not shot down saying it was never done before, it shouldn't be done again. People listened to one another and built on that idea rather than tearing it down. And third, there was a culture of really, let's experiment. Red Label got as many ads wrong as it get it right. There was an ad on Kumbh where you left your father, which got huge hate. And the idea was, it's okay. We will experiment, 2, 3 will do well, 1 or 2 may not do well, but that's what bringing diverse thoughts and diverse ideas into innovation is all about. So my big lessons from the Red Label story is, first, there is something about diversity of thought and experience, psychologically being safe, speaking up, listening to one another, having a culture of experimentation, and that is leading to pure innovation. And second, when you are a diverse organization, use the tools in your power, like your brands, to actually stand up and make a point saying, we will not be just an FMCG. We will be a voice of advocacy that shows a slice of real India. Yeah, so that's,
thank you. Thank you, Anandi. Excellent episodes on the link, vital link between diversity and innovation. Thank you for that. So, Priyanka, will you share your thoughts?
Good afternoon, everyone. Great to be here. Thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit of my perspective. I'd just like to kind of go back a little bit to the history of Accenture. It's been close to 3 decades that we have had a inclusion and diversity strategy in place. And therefore, it's at the back of a lot of lessons, getting a lot of things right as well as a lot of things wrong, a lot of learnings along the way, with which some of the experience that I'm going to share with all of you today. And clearly, I mean, the point that Neha ma'am was talking about, inclusion and innovation, I mean, how do these two come together? The fact is that both of them have their home, in my mind, on perspective sharing. Inclusion invites people, accepts people as they are, and innovation brings in different skills, different thoughts, different ideas on the table and allows them to thrive. And therefore, there is but a foundational symbiotic relationship between the two. If I kind of go back a few years within Accenture, while we've had some great strides on gender diversity, our focus was really on expanding on disability inclusion, people with disabilities. And in that space, we realized that we had a strong strategy, a very strong leadership intent, as well as the whole ecosystem was enabled to say that yes, we will hire a certain percentage of people with disabilities. We will ensure that there are projects where they will have roles and responsibilities identified for them. We would make sure that we have tie-ups with the right recruiting firms to attract the talent. So a lot of things were set in place. The only thing that got missed in this big puzzle, or was part of the decision at the time, that we would let the projects manage the accessibility needs of the individuals, because they would be closest to whatever accommodation needs that our employees with disability would have. And in that space, we realized that slowly there was an invisible gap that was appearing, that we had the people, but they were somehow not feeling meaningfully engaged. They didn't have the right set of accommodation, support involved, not the right set of assistive technologies. And we did have to kind of tap into the innovation and learning of the teams impacted. We brought them all together, whether it was the project teams themselves, the employees, our accessibility council, our HR and diversity inclusion teams. And that's where we figured that we needed to really engage this team as one team and let us look at the problem end to end and not in silos. And what we came up finally, what this team delivered was a recommendation that all assistive needs, all accommodation needs have to be centrally funded within Accenture. They cannot be left to every project to manage on their own. There has to be a budget set aside. The next thing, there are a lot of accommodation needs, technology is changing really fast. We cannot leave it to the individual to always know what is the accommodation need that is required by them. We engaged our procurement teams and got a whole accessibility technology catalog in place, which is now available not just to employees with disability, but with all our employees. So even if you do not have a disclosed disability, if you feel you need any assistive devices, they are available for you to ask for. And thirdly, what we made sure is that we were continuously listening to our people to make sure that any further changes on this were led by their feedback and not what people higher up thought was best for them. So it's like you cannot solve for people without having them in the equation. The people who are most directly impacted by it have to be part of your problem solutioning and not outside of it. With that, we set up a whole accommodation and assistive technology support, which is now in more than 40 countries across the world for Accenture. And slowly Anandi talked about incremental innovation. Slowly, this one big idea has morphed into many other things. We have now a virtual space where people can go and try out the various assistive devices that are there and see what fits them best and then request for the same. So it's an onward journey, and I feel that both inclusion and innovation continuously will challenge us to come together. And when they come together, the voice on all ends has to be heard and acted upon.
Thank you, Priyanka. So next is Neha. Some episodes where there's a link between.
Thank you, and thank you, Priyanka, for bringing up the point about the people who you're building services for and who are most affected by it must have a voice in building that. So by the nature of our work, we're a mental health organization, and so a lot of what we do represents those that are often excluded in corporate life, in business life, schools, colleges. And when you think about the lived experience of people with mental illness and what challenges they go through and how important it is to take in their view as we innovate and build a service. So for us at Amaha, very on we realized that we have to be collaborative. This is not a scientists and medical run organization as much as it is also run by those with lived experience. So expertise and innovation coming in the sort of cross-pollination and shared learnings in this sort of collaborative framework that we created. Over 200 people in the organization, several of them are coming from personal lived experience or caregiving experience of someone with a mental illness perhaps, or they identify in a diverse way in terms of gender or socio-cultural aspects. And really it's the coming together that has informed two things at Amaha. Both our service design as well as our product design. So the belief really was that the mental health sector is served largely in a fragmented, siloed way. And you go to different people for different types of services within this sector, but often the treatment and the support that people need is sort of one continuous integrated requirement. And so the service design itself was responding to this need that the community had. And this is 200 million people, pre-COVID numbers, 1 in 4 people. India is sort of has 1/3 of the world's depressed, suicides and addiction cases. And so they're there amongst us everywhere, in our workplaces, in our colleges, in our homes, in our communities. And yet there is the question of inclusion, there is a question of equal rights, there's a question of recognition. And so how do we design a service that is truly inclusive, representing these sectors, but also serving them in the best possible way? And how do we design product innovation in a way that it is responding to each of those needs? So whether it is the technology platform that solves for early intervention, easy access. We have people now coming in from 300 cities. We're serving over 15 languages. We work with corporations and individuals, but across the country, coming in with very unique socio-cultural requirements, whether it's the LGBTQ community or we work with young people as young as infants and little children going on to families and elder care. For that entire range, the product innovations needed at the level of discovery, at the level of building awareness, providing information and helping people reach that first step of diagnosis and identifying what the challenge is, to then stitching together the entire care management journey. Every aspect of it is designed in a way that it is frictionless, it is easy, it's accessible, and it's affordable. And so the idea really is to be able to solve for this at scale, to cater to people no matter where they're at on their need journey, whether they have an illness or they have a wellness challenge, but to meet them where their need is. And for our service to respond to that. So we've got a set of online tools, we've got chatbots, there are people you can access remotely, round the clock, 24/7, even therapy goes on till 12 o'clock at night. The reason for local languages is because people have the need to talk about their personal challenges in their sort of language, right? And so that's why we work across 15 languages. And so every aspect actually of our service delivery as well as the product construct has been designed to say, we recognize that this person has already spent many years before they've reached their first point of help. The India average is maybe 10 to 15 years, global average maybe 4 to 5 years, but people have spent a long time getting to that first point of help. Now, if they've gone to their HR manager, they've gone to their line manager, they've gone to the founder of the organization, how is it that we can seed a culture in leadership to accept these challenges, to be able to recognize what early intervention in a supportive environment looks like? So how do we train for that? We've got corporate programs on diversity and inclusion. So we work right from the leadership boardroom down to the management, down to the employee lines, and make sure that whether it's white collar or blue collar workers, we are able to provide the support they need in their language, in their context, and in the manner that will help them and their families the most. So that's a little bit around our product and service design, and I think the lessons we've learned from coming together. My co-founder, Dr. Amit Malik, is a psychiatrist who spent 15 years in the NHS working on severe mental illnesses and then moving back to India, setting up a technology-enabled platform. For me, I'm a social entrepreneur coming from a lived experience of a family that has struggled with mental illness. So without any technical psychiatric qualifications, we're both building this organization, learning from each other in a truly collaborative framework, and very grateful for all the insights that we're generating from millions of conversations that we have with people across the country, learning from people's experiences on how they are processing their mental health challenges, how they are being able to get support within their organizations or the lack of, and what kind of tools and support systems would they best need to be able to further their journey in being productive and being happy, healthy members of society, and bridging all those gaps for true sort of diversity inclusion. So thank you for that.
Neha, I think the example you've given is a true example where your stakeholders, main stakeholders, your clients are triggering the seeds for innovation, and how you are innovating on that and coming out with different to meet their requirements. So that's a beautiful example that you've given. One question comes to my mind before I move on to Aishwarya. This is happening because of the number of clients that you have. Do you have some formal committees also? Because see, whatever you do ultimately comes back to the government. You need clearances, you need so many things. So do you have some kind of formal committees also where you have all these people together, or it's just by their requirements which come in through the problems that trigger this?
So it's a multi-tiered structure because there are needs that are different. So we recognize that mental health, whether it's wellness or whether it's illness, they are triggered by a set of biopsychosocial factors, right? So you have the psychiatric involvement, there may be medication involved, there is psychotherapy which has its own requirements and legislations, and then there is the community aspect. How are we treated in our workplaces? If we go and say that we have a challenge with postpartum depression, what is the response of the organization, etc. So there's the role of the community. So for all of this, of course, there is regulation that sort of governs all of this. We ourselves have an in-house team of about 130 specialists. So psychiatrists at multiple levels, therapists at multiple levels, who are then in charge of training and supervision. So the idea of building a large in-house team is for us to be able to create a certain degree of standardization and accountability in the system, for everyone to be able to work on the same technology platform, so they have that sort of peer support and sort of good governance across the organization, and then for us to be able to build on capacity and scaling. So in fact, we're just in the process of setting up a training institute now to be able to support the training and capacity needs that we have for our own organization, but also for the sector overall.
So we'll hear a little more about it in our next round. So coming to Aishwarya now, some interesting episodes from you, Aishwarya.
Sure, Veena ma'am, thank you. So, yeah, I'm from Decathlon. I hope many of you know about Decathlon. It's a sports retailer. Decathlon has been a brand which purely runs on purpose. So when we wanted to have diversity, we were thinking, why should we have diversity? Because we were already doing pretty well in India. And then we thought, okay, we just have to attach it to our purpose to move people through the wonder of sport. I will tell you, even though we had diversity, the moment we started inclusion, we saw beautiful results coming as, innovation in terms of products, innovation in terms of process. I wouldn't say innovation in terms of customers, but it would be to say the way we interact with our customers really changed. A few examples that I would like to give on all the three segments. One is to say that on the customer engagement, I will give a very example that happens on an everyday basis. So most of the time we have our sport events either early in the morning or late in the evening. And we saw that women were never participating in the sport practice. And I will tell you, once we started to have diversity increasing inside the store and also having inclusion, we saw that, you know, there was a sports practice that commenced between 11 to 12 p.m. And we saw a lot of women coming through that particular time. You know what? Because morning, early hours, the mothers are normally very busy sending their children to school or husband to the office. So the women didn't have the real time to come and practice sports. So it has been one major change. The second thing which I would like to really talk about customer engagement is also the fact that this is a very beautiful example I keep giving. So there was an all-men team which went for a range selection of fitness product. All right? And when they went, they came back with a pink track, a pink t-shirt and a pink shoe. And it didn't sell well. Why? Because the men assumed that women love pink. But what men fail to understand is women try to like neon colors are the ones which is currently fashionable. So it really changed the way we started to interact with our customers. In terms of the process innovation, I think in terms of process, I'll stick one example. So when we open and close the stores, after we close the store, we normally take at least 2 hours to put the products back in the aisle, and it really takes at least 2 to 2.5 hours for the people to finish the whole facing so that we are ready for the next day. And you know, once women started to come in, there were a lot of elements that got added into it that we also have to be efficient now. I will tell you, we continuously improved on how we could organize ourselves, and we were able to finish the whole facing within 45 minutes. From 2 hours to 45 minutes is a huge deal, and it didn't impact or benefit only the women. Let me tell you, our men of our team also were very happy to go back home very early. That also contributes a lot to the wellness aspect. In terms of the product innovation, I would quote an example. I think Decathlon is now a 47-year-old company. Apart from India, majority globally, we have been a very well gender-balanced team. And I will tell you, we are very proud to proud to say that we have more than 4,000 plus patented products. It's not about only patented products, but they are the ones that really create a lot of value for the customers. Some of them you would have experienced yourself, something like roller net, a 2-second tent. Who could imagine a 2-second tent? Every time going to a trek, we fear about how long it takes up to set up a tent. It takes minimum 20 minutes. 20 minutes to 2 seconds is a great deal, right? So I think we have benefited out of the product innovation, process innovation, customer engagement. And let me tell you, thanks to these, whatever has been happening because of diversity and inclusion, we saw at least a 17% growth in terms of the efficiency and 24% growth in terms of our productivity. Very measurable, very data-driven. We had and I think that's the beauty once we start to have inclusion in organizations.
Thank you. So what I said in my opening remarks about the impact of diversity on the performance of the organization, you've really explained it so beautifully. Thank you for that. Quickly, if we can have a round where each one of you can just briefly in 2 to 3 minutes, tell about your organizations. What are the initiatives that you all are taking for encouraging diversity and inclusion? Very briefly, but yet getting your points through.
Sure, thanks. And I think I'm just going to go back to what Neha said, as well, that innovation comes from everywhere. It's not about white collar, blue collar, or what's happening on the C-suite. And I think this is one of the really important innovations that we started doing in Hindustan Unilever. As an HR community and as a community overall, we are obsessed with the number of women that we will bring into the boardroom, or the number of women that we bring into senior management. But I think that there is a hidden problem which we overlook, which is how many women are actually entering the workforce even at the frontline level. In the last 18 months after COVID, the number of frontline jobs has gone up 1.5 million new jobs in the FMCG and last mile delivery space, thanks to the Zeptos or the Swiggy Instamart of the world. But all these jobs 98% of them are men. Women aren't participating in this at all. And as a large sales organization, we said, let's make a change here. So we are bringing in women into the sales force. And this is a stereotype of ours, that women don't want to do sales. They don't want to go shop to shop and take orders or even fulfill orders. It's our stereotype because we feel it's physically hard labor. You'll be surprised at the number of women who have come up, raised their hands, and want to build their career. And we have a program called Ahilya, which is Women in Sales at the Front Line. As of now, we have 1,200 salespeople. And I think it's amazing because as an FMCG organization, we've stopped saying salesmen. We now say salespeople or salespersons. And I think, women bring in a very different change. For example, one of the thoughts that we had in Calcutta is one of the women walked up, this Ahilya salesperson walked up and said, we're talking about Lux sandalwood as the new fragrance, but because it's packaged, nobody can smell it. Take 1 bar of soap and leave it open so that people can smell it. Then sales will go up. And she bought it out of her own money and said, gave it to the shopkeeper saying, leave this open. People will buy it. And that's the kind of shift, that's the kind of different thinking that we want. And it comes from discontinuous change like this. So salespeople, that's our new innovation.
I think if I just kind of look at where we stand as an organization, currently across Accenture globally, 47% of our workforce is women. In India, it's a little over 48%. Organizations I know are struggling to even hit the 40% mark of representation on gender. And that's in itself like a huge advantage that we've been able to build for the organization, to have representation and representation that matters. And one of the key things, more than an initiative that I'd like to call out, is more of the embedding of the inclusion and diversity lens in the organization, right from strategy to policy to processes to the last mile employee interaction. So the embedding that has happened of the inclusion and diversity lens is making sure that we don't have to look at what have we done on diversity separate to our business or talent strategy. It is well entrenched and embedded in that. When our business leads look at their hiring plans for next year, the first number will be, we need to say, for example, hire 10,000 people. And it's a given that when entry level will be gender balanced, we will do it, and then overall this is an X percentage of gender as well as persons with disability or the other diversity lenses that we want to apply. It is a way of how we do business. And I think that has been like a big game changer for us, where the whole inclusion and diversity perspective doesn't come at a much later date or not, or there are, there's no one function that is running this. Today, if you ask me what is my team of people who are practitioners in inclusion and diversity, I do not have a number, because at every node of management, supervisory, I have champions and people who have this inbuilt from a performance culture standpoint. So I just want to leave that thought in terms of just looking at inclusion and diversity beyond an initiative, but as a way of operating and managing your business and people.
Thank you. Thank you, Neha. Neha?
So we are brought on by organizations when there is a need to say, not just let's look at inclusion and diversity, but let's also measure the outcome. Let's look at the wellness quotient of how people are feeling. So it's not just about tokenism. It's about actually saying, we've put certain practices in place across our teams, across gender, LGBTQ, various communities. How is that actually? What is the result of that in terms of how people are feeling? It's about absenteeism. It's about workplace productivity, but it's also also about wellness, it's also about presentism, so when you're present, but you're not really there, right? And so how do you measure that? Now, for a lot of organizations, this is a blind spot because they don't really know. There is no metrics or dashboard or something that gives you a visualization of what the wellness quotient of an organization is. So, coming from this need and recognizing that if we want to serve employees, we want to serve management and leaders, we have to provide the tools and services to do that. So at Amaha, we've actually built an entire dashboard where you can visualize and you can get data that is broken down at a cohort level that tells you within this department, these are the stress levels, this is the wellness level, this is the work-life balance level, etc. And so, with that data, what happens is that people, the managers as well as the sort of leaders of the organization can have a real visualization of how people are feeling. And that can then help them put measures in place, put policies in place, and change that. Today we partner with 70, 80 corporates and organizations ranging from startups to large, to also colleges and universities, but also large multinational corporations. And for each of these, we've realized that the benefit of this visualization is that it brings everything in sight. And then it gives you the tools and the ability to reach people in the way that they want. So whether it's a 24/7 helpline, whether it is chatbots and various digital services, or it is providing therapy and psychiatry. So we're about a year and a half ago, we introduced psychiatry as a service because we realized that a lot of people actually have more severe needs and might actually need some medication or some support from a psychiatric diagnostic perspective that they were not getting otherwise. And so again, this is making the point that it's not just about tokenism and saying, I'm putting a tool in place, you just tell me that, you have access to a helpline, call it whenever you like, otherwise, don't bother us. But it's really putting your intent and your actions and innovation at the crux of it and saying, okay, we will build for that. So we provide therapy as well as psychiatric services, online as well as offline. So last year we went offline, we've set up centers in Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore. And so the same cohort of people can represent how they're feeling on a day-to-day basis, weekly basis, visible to their employers within the corporate environment, but they can also seek support online, through the call and chat features as well as coming into our centers. And so that provides a more holistic support system. And in that sense, we continue to be inspired in at least the innovation that we're doing with our corporate folks as well as with the individuals and families.
Thank you. Ishwarya?
Just to add on to what Anandi shared, she was sharing about salesmen and how it's now salespersons. Very similar to that in Decathlon, we call sport leader. So sport leader is very gender neutral. But what happens when they move into leadership position is automatically women identify by gender. I'm a women leader, right? So we were aiming to shift a mindset. So our leaders are called heroes. HER''OES. So a man and a woman both can be addressed as heroes, right? So it did definitely bring a big shift in the mindset of our leaders. And I think as also Priyanka shared that, it is very embedded in the system. So for us, it's never a differentiation. We just run on meritocracy for everything. So whenever there is a nomination, whenever there is a recruitment, whenever there is a be even tracking learning and development measures, we try to see how it is impacting both the genders. And with that, we take some actionable plans for both the genders. So that's how we drive it.
But do you have any specific targets for meeting the gender balance requirement?
While we do have targets because what we measure gets improved, but it purely runs on meritocracy.
Okay. So actually we were to have a public sector representative in Shukla Mistry. She was to join us today, but last minute she had to travel to Chennai for a meeting. She called me up last evening. So filling in to her shoes, because I'm from public sector and giving a little flavor of public sector for those of you who are from private sector, we've grown in a gender neutral environment. I think Mr. Mahapatra sitting here and many of my friends from public sector and the participants here. So there's, as she said, that diversity and inclusion should not be an initiative. We've never felt that ever, that there was an initiative, whether it is hiring, whether it's at the time of promotion, whether it's for rewards and recognition. It's the same treatment given to all. But Over and above that, for developing women, we do give them that encouragement of giving them some development forums and some special measures which make them more comfortable, like giving them a transport late at night if they're going home late. I would ensure that all my youngsters, when they're going home, should have someone to drop them back because of safety point of view. So such things are taken care of, but otherwise, I think it's gender neutral. And on a lighter vein, whenever I sat in a panel for, I don't know, Mr. Mahapatra will agree with me, when we had youngsters coming in for recruitment, sometimes women did so well, the girls did so well, that the entire panel wanted to select all of them. And I used to say gender balance. So let's have some men also. So actually that is the situation. And she has very rightly put it when Anandi said that there's always that whenever we talk about diversity, we straight away think of the boardroom. How many are there in the boardroom? It's going to happen. Let's have patience for it. Because it's your pipeline, you know, how you're building your pipeline. So where's the foundation if you're today taking a number of people? They're rising up, they are developing. Maybe 10 years down the line, you will see what the situation will be. The situation is different from when I became a director. I think I was one of the first directors in public sector as a woman director. Today, almost all our large companies have 1 or 2 women directors. CMD of EIL today, is a woman. So it's all over now. So things have changed in the last 10 years. Next 10 years, the men will have to find their seats on the board also because it's a tough competition. Everyone's growing together. So with that, coming on to, we don't have much time, but just one last thought before we open it to the house. We've all spoken about our companies, about internal stakeholders, though of course Neha did mention about the external stakeholders also. They are largely dependent on them. Any of you would like to talk about the impact of diversity, inclusion and innovation on your external stakeholders, be it your vendors, be it the community, society, anyone could start with it. Priyanka?
So I'll just share about some of our work and effort in terms of challenging our own thinking and norms, which has had an impact from a community standpoint. So of course, typically when we look at who gains entry into corporate India at the entry level, especially in a services or a consulting organization, your education is predominantly the qualifier, right? It's very difficult for us to dissociate your educational background, your educational qualification with the entry-level job that you'll be considered for. So in an attempt to disrupt our own thinking and challenge ourselves on whether really, education, qualification indeed needs to be that only qualifier beyond which we will not look at other talent. We kind of, looked at it from a different lens, which is about one, of course, looking at employability and creating talent in pockets that currently don't think really they have a space in corporate India for them. And therefore looking at underrepresented communities, underrepresented youth who don't necessarily have the right qualifiers from an education standpoint, but very well have the aptitude and with the right, interventions can be employable in a firm like Accenture as well as many other of our peer organizations. So there's a whole inclusive internship program that we've set up, which runs in anywhere from about 4 months to a year, depending on which line of business we are looking at the talent for. And there we have even disrupted, where we have looked at school dropouts, children who have not had the opportunity to even complete 12th grade, but with the right kind of academic input which is outside of a school, with our trained learning and knowledge management team, we've created these internship programs where we are checking on aptitude, on very basic communication, and then that communication also gets augmented. So I think that's been one of our great joys, literally. We call, one of our inclusion programs is called Aram, and it's literally a joy to see these individuals, their families. So it's literally, you invest in that one individual. It's not just the family, their whole village has that sense of pride that their person has been able to make its way into an organization like Accenture. So
Is it a CSR initiative or?
it's not really CSR. It's actually run by our inclusion and diversity
and
team.
you take them onto your teams and.
Yes. So so what we do is it's an inclusive internship.
What kind of jobs do you do?
Tech jobs. Tech jobs, corporate
them.
functions, we skill them. It's a skill, we skill them. And we have anywhere between 85 to 90% conversion of this talent.
And where do they rise along with others?
Yeah, they join along with others. So basically the
So there's
investment.
no resistance from the employees who are qualified?
Not really, no. No. In fact, like I said, it's a matter of pride. And the fact is that the entry level assessment process has not been changed. The input has been done to scale them up prior as part of the internship. So they go through then an assessment process.
By the time they reach there, the qualification is there.
Yes.
Right,
so by the time they come through the assessment, they already have the skills that we need. They clear the same exams that any other entry level fresher would do for us.
Good, very nice.
So,
that's very good.
Yeah.
What strength would you be having of such people?
So currently, I can speak for the technology group. We've crossed the 1,000th person that has come in through this channel for us.
Wonderful.
Yeah, 16th, we have the 50th batch coming on board.
That's an excellent way of engaging with society, I must say.
Thank you so
Excellent.
much.
Yeah. Anyone else who would like to speak?
Very similar story, so I'll just share what we do. We have 30 manufacturing sites, and traditionally manufacturing sites are in locations which are a little bit remote to get physical benefits. And when we started investing in those sites, we realized that villages around continue to be villages of India. And Hindustan Unilever had a big factory, but around there continued to be small villages. So we said, can we shift the way in which the community thinks and perceives around our factory sites? So around each of our 30 sites, we adopted 5 villages each. These 5 villages is where we started running a program called Prabhat. In our Prabhat program, we start teaching them about health and hygiene, the importance of washing their hands, the importance of constructing a toilet, the importance of brushing your teeth twice a day. So we started a health and hygiene program. We started a livelihood program where for 500 rupees, people can come in and get a certification, whether they want to learn retail sales, English speaking, whether they learn small things like mobile repair and technician, whether they would learn something as simple as how do I start furthering my education by learning computer programming. So we started teaching them livelihood skills. And the third big program we ran in each of these villages was water conservation. How do you use high yield seeds? How do you create dams? How do you create reservoirs? Because running water is a huge problem in our villages as well. So it's a 3-pronged approach on livelihood, health and hygiene, and water. It's been running for the past, since 2009. So it's been running for over 2 decades now, or a decade now. And we've already crossed 5 million Indians that we have trained, touched, or given health and sanitation to. So again, something which helps bring people and lift people, bringing them back into our organization. And much like Accenture, we've hired some of these people into our retail sales as well.
Thank you. Neha, I'd like to ask you, do you have any suggestions on how can we enhance this diversity, inclusion, leading to innovation? The focus has to be on innovation. Today's conference is on innovation. So is there something which comes to your mind? And I'll come to Aishwarya after this one.
I think just an example that I was going to share is investing in communities and building capacity so that it becomes self-sufficient. Just taking from what you shared, for us, the one example that comes to mind is we're a service organization, so we work in psychiatry and therapy and integrated mental health services, but we realize that a lot of people need to talk to others who are going through similar challenges. And so then we set up our community section, and today we have over 40,000 people engaged actively on these online communities, whether it's for OCD or for addiction or for depression. There's a dedicated community to LGBTQ folks. In fact, we've also set up focus groups. So we're actually now conducting mental health focused self-help groups for the LGBTQ community. So in doing that and building self-reliant capacity, within communities, I think is the best way, because then it's not dependent on any external support system or specialist. It is something that is self-generative and can be easily sustained and can be built on by the community for the community. So I think that's a lesson that we learned from the work that we did within the LGBTQ segment, but also more broadly. And the power of communities is phenomenal, because you can keep talking to specialists, but talking to somebody else who's been through the same thing is really what shifts the game, and we've seen the success of that.
Any suggestions, Aishwarya?
For me, I think I just want to share a very similar story of how Priyanka shared. I think we have our partners also who are also producing partners. One great initiative that we have done, I wouldn't say initiative, but it organically happened, is also to say, how could we also practice sports with them? So every week we also try to practice sports with them. And also as part of our, it's not a CSR initiative, but as a part of the inclusion, because we believe that as a company, we have to represent the society that we are living in. So related to that, we also happen to work with employable youths from different socioeconomic background. We train approximately 100 of them every year, and after their training period, they get employed with us. So that's how we go about it. We engage with the communities.
Thank you so much. So now we have about 10 minutes left. So I thought if we open the house for any questions. And one thing I can assure you, no one was sleeping in this hall. I was watching all around. So thanks to all my panelists, everyone was awake. So, yeah.
Hi. So this question is a little bit from what I have seen in my personal life. So in my
Can you
home,
introduce yourself?
my name is Kunal. I am from Amaha. What I've seen is in my home, the gender diversity is well represented. I'm the only son among 4 sisters. So what I saw was when my second sister, became a mother, she had to quit her job for 2 years. And my elder sister, who's a doctor, did not start her own clinic till my nephew grew up. So what kind of institutional support have we thought about, and the question to all the panelists, in supporting women at their pregnancy or during childbirth or the period right after? Because no matter how many women employees we hire, there is going to be a break point at childbirth, at the time at which they become mothers. Okay. This is something that I've seen, and I'd love to hear from you.
Anyone wants to?
Kunal, thanks for that question. And I think it's a real problem because, the cliff where women, not after marriage, but definitely after maternity, fall out is real. And I think at HUL, we're blessed because we've had for the past 5 years, 100% maternity return, not just immediately, but we track it for the first year. So 1 year after you've come back, we continue to retain you, and that's 100% maternity support. I think there are 2 or 3 things that happen. First, are there role models around who can speak to women to tell them what to expect and to temper what their expectations are when they come back? Yeah. When I went on maternity, I had a role model in my CHRO who sat down with me and said, first assurance, your job is there when you come back. Second assurance, you decide how much you want to dial up and dial down depending on your comfort level. Third assurance, your career is not going to take a back seat because you are choosing to be a mother. So are there enough people who sit and have that conversation with you? And trust me, what I've realized is that women and mothers pay it forward. Someone had the conversation with me. I make sure that anyone in my team who's going on maternity, I have a chat with them. Yeah? But it's simple things. Organizationally, when that person comes back, make sure on the day they come back, there is something waiting for them. Do not leave them idle. Either a job or a real meaty project which can keep them fully occupied. Because they're coming back as ambitious career women who are also mothers. So I think it's an organizational, sustained, and it's a lot about doing the right things, even though they're small, doing the right things to bring mothers back into the workforce.
In fact, even in public sector, We have 100% of them come back. No one leaves the organization, and they are encouraged for it. A bit of counseling is required, a bit of mindset on the part of the young women is also required. And we've got creches now in most of our work centers to see to it that the children are around their mothers when. So all those facilities are there, and large number of women are coming, but you're right, at the time of COVID, a lot of dropouts were there. Those were different situations. So it's all from situation to situation. Anyone, next question, please? Yeah.
Good afternoon, ladies. So, Veena ji, can I begin with a little bit of disagreement and then the serious question? The disagreement being the men folk, the moment they realized that women are coming into, various roles, so they went in for gender neutral language. Why can't we have a chairwoman rather than a chairperson, or a sales girl or a saleswoman rather than a person? Why should we go there? I would be more comfortable with maintaining the dignity of the sex. So that's part one. The question is, apart from Mission Chandrayaan, I have not seen many ladies being made in charge of a risky venture. Innovation is all about risk, smaller or bigger. Anandi shared the example of putting female in the front end kind of jobs. Because till the time the mega corporations don't do it, the others won't follow. So your perspective on how the managements of present day modern Indian corporates are looking at putting women in charge of risky, innovative ventures which are based on innovations and other risky ventures. Thank you.
I look back 40 years. Please have your seat. I look back 40 years. When I joined my organization in 1983, there were hardly any women. Today, the IOC refinery, the director is a woman. The CMD of EIL is a woman. These are all very high-risk jobs. We have pilots. One second, let me complete, please. We have pilots. We have women coming in combat roles. So, going into the thought that why are women not where they are not, it's a preparedness on both sides. I think it's a matter of a mindset. As a woman, today, I don't think that women are not put there because she's a woman. There is no such definition in any job which says women not allowed. But as I said, the people are preparing in the pipeline. Earlier in the army, only in the education corps and the AMC, they were taking women. Today in combat roles, they are there. Our all-women naval team went all over the world. So I think it's a change of mindset which many of us need, that why are women not where they are not? They have to compete for it. If she was found fit, she became, and now another example I'd like to give you, that you have to see the number of people who are competing for that particular position. It's a competition. When I applied for my position as Director HR, 67 applications were there, 15 were shortlisted. So I got selected. If I was not selected, it's not correct if I say I was a woman, so I was not selected. So we can't put that on. I think for all the women here, please, more than the men, if you don't get selected somewhere, please introspect and don't feel that it's a woman. So it's a mindset of men and women both. They're doing well. And a few years down the line, they're going to be everywhere. You can remember these words of mine. Can someone else ask a question, please? And we'll come back to you if there's time. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tarannum. First off, thank you so much for sharing such. I'm sorry.
Which company?
EY.
Okay.
Thank you so much for sharing such wonderful stories. My question is that while we are talking about building and developing a diverse workforce, to what extent do we feel that we are also empowering them in the sense that, for instance, we spoke about sales teams. Not always are all factors under our control if we are sending the external factors like people's mindsets, infrastructure, logistics, safety, etc. To how daunting are these external challenges, and to what extent do we feel that we as organizations are able to mitigate them, because not everything is conducive to what we want to do?
I'll share my perspective. Thanks for the question. I mean, honestly, I feel that the place to really start inculcating values of equity, inclusion, is your childhood, right? It is through your growing years. However, organizations for the last many years have really been, expending a lot of effort in creating trainings, in creating, a general ecosystem around which not just their more senior talent, but as you're taking in people in the front line, in the junior roles, when they're coming in from college, most organizations, if we look around, definitely have programs where they inculcate the organizational values as well as the values around equity, inclusion. And the one key thing really that I feel works is for people to hear it from their own peers, for people to feel it in their teams. And for people to feel it in their teams, the person who's most responsible is the supervisor or the lead for that team. Everybody's experience in our organization is not how the CEO behaves or how the head of the department behaves. It is literally their immediate supervisor. And apart from making sure that at the entry level we have enough of exposure, enough of education, it is the frontline supervisors that we really need to spend and invest in their own capabilities, not just as people who will get the job done, but also as people leads, which I think is much where we are headed to in terms of the general landscape around us.
Very right. You wanted to say something, Ishwarya?
No, I just want to add on to it because as society, we do have a number of challenges. Today, let's even take the representation of women across politics, across media. I think today we have a visible challenge. I think what we really need to act on first is what is in the circle of control. If we are able to do that really, really well, somewhere the message will pass through with different generations. Let me put it, with different generations. So I think we have a big job to be done with whatever is there in the circle of control first.
I'm afraid we have time only for one more question. Any more questions? Any question? Yeah, please.
So first of all, thank you for all of that insight and sharing all of that, all of those experiences. Going back to the question that one of our friends raised here, we talk a lot about what we're doing for the female folks in our companies. Are we doing enough for the male folks for them to be able to be supportive for their spouses at homes? When it comes to paternity benefit, for instance, is there enough conversation around that topic? And if there is conversation, is this discussion enough? So for instance, in the government, we have 15-day paternity leave as compared to a 6-month or a 12-month maternity leave. So is there time that we start also looking at this aspect in terms of the equity that we are trying to maintain a gender balance in the workforce?
Can I just add? Yeah. Start with it. So I think at Decathlon, we are well aware of this, and we've also time and again seeing that, there is a study which says that man spends 1 hour, 30 minutes for household chores and caring for the child. A woman, on an average, minimum spends around 5 hours, depending whether she's a working woman or the women at home. The time just goes up. So I think we have to build a very long futuristic way to balance this out. So in Decathlon, what we have done is when we launched the childcare benefits, we also launched it for the men. For example, to say that, okay, when we wanted to reimburse for the childcare, it's not only for the women, it's also for the men. And when we talk about paternity, we are also now starting to talk about how the fathers can also take some time to also help the mothers at home. So I think it's evolving in nature, but we still have a very, very long way to go. I just want to add on to an example that I read with L'Oreal management in Australia, where L'Oreal represents the cosmetic industry. It's around 70% of them being women in the leadership roles. So they have introduced a policy of 3 months of paternity leave so that they are starting to understand what it is to care for a child, right? So it's just evolving, I would say.
And there was the example of the creches in the corporate buildings, and I wonder how many of those are men taking in their kids as against women. I think this is a point that is not to be glazed on. As someone who is an incredibly passionate woman in leadership, I'm technically on my 4th startup. Wherever I am in forums with men or women, the conversation is very much that it is not a level playing field. Every woman out there has to recognize that their challenges are harder. Every man has to recognize that women go through everything from childbirth to menopause to periods to household responsibilities to caregiving responsibilities. Most often, that falls onto the woman. And so it has travel restrictions. It has restrictions about, if you're both ambitious career people, then whose career will take a backseat at what point. And so I do think it's going to take us at this rate about 200 years to get to any place of equality. But at the moment, the responsibility of each one of us who's now in this conversation on diversity and inclusion is to really recognize what it takes. Right? What should we be really doing in our own little way? Every woman in this room, what can you do to set an example within your friends, colleges, workplaces, communities, to actually shine that hope, right? And to be able to share and build that solidarity for other women. Because it is true that you have to mentor and champion, and we have to make way. This is the time for exceptions. So women have to create exceptions, and often women undersell themselves. A man will get up and say, I am the best person for this role, perhaps, and a woman might talk about the 4 things she cannot do as part of her initial introduction, right? So it is about conditioning ourselves to recognize that we're out there equally, with equal opportunities, equally capable, and with the assurance or at least the hope and aspiration that the load at home will be equally shared, right? Because if we don't have the ask, then there is no motivation to change. So that's what I'd like to leave everyone with.
Very well said. In fact, I always say, that one should think of what is in your own control and not always keep thinking about what government can do, what organizations can do. We've chosen our own careers. You see, there are so many careers, different types, engaging in different types of timings that are required. So it's high time we now changed our own mindset too. And another thing which always comes to my mind, and our discussion today also landed up in the same, we talk about diversity and inclusion, it always ends up with gender diversity. I think that mindset has to change somewhere. I kept diverting the conversation, it was back to gender diversity, all kinds of diversity, whether persons with disabilities, whether it is regional diversity, all kinds of diversity are important, which strengthen a company, which strengthen individuals. So limiting it only to maternity leave and paternity leave, I think we should now, all professionals, move beyond that. So it's been an interesting discussion. I hope you all have had some rich takeaways from this, and I hope you all will benefit. I'd like to close with a quote of King Martin Luther Jr. when he says that you don't have to see the entire staircase, take one step at a time. So sky is the limit for all of you. I see a lot of young faces in this gathering here today. I'm sure you all will take back many learnings and will be able to implement in your organizations. Thank you, FICCI, for giving this opportunity to us to be able to be here. Thank you so much.